Good morning, good evening to everyone, and a warm welcome to the Future of Additive Manufacturing, held in partnership with the National Additive Manufacturing Innovation Cluster, also known as NAMIC. My name is Jue, and I'm the CEO of SGInnovate. It is my pleasure to open today's event alongside Dr. Ho Chao Sing, Managing Director of NAMIC. I'm not going to ply you with data on how important 3D printing is to the future of manufacturing, the environment, and the global economy, since I would be preaching to the converted. Instead, I'm just going to say a few words about what SGInnovate does and a few more words about NAMIC. SGInnovate is a government-owned early-stage deep tech VC, venture capitalist, and ecosystem developer. Our raison d'etre is to make concrete the potential of deep science and deep technologies for social and economic impact. We do this by bringing people together, by fostering collaborations, by raising awareness, by developing talent, and ultimately by investing in deep tech startups. We work closely with our partners, such as NAMIC, to organize events like today's because we see such conversations as important precursors to eventual action. And it is action where NAMIC comes in. Set up in 2016, NAMIC is one of the most successful collaboration platforms in Singapore. By providing co-funding support, it works with small companies to assess feasibility of AM adoption. It works with large companies to test bed prospective AM solutions. It brings small and large companies together on joint projects through its 3 hubs, strategically located at the Nanyang Technological University, the National University of Singapore, and the Singapore University of Technology and Design. The location of these hubs at these universities also brings cutting-edge research to the table, allowing it to be translated and deployed by our corporate partners. NAMIC also works with Enterprise Singapore and international bodies to develop and establish industry standards. In fact, it is a strategic partner of ASTM International's Additive Manufacturing Center of Excellence and hosts its inaugural presence in Singapore and Asia. All in all, NAMIC's programs have touched hundreds of companies since inception. Coming back to SGInnovate, we invest in areas in which we, as a government-owned entity, we believe require some jump-starting. We, over the next few years, advanced manufacturing, of which additive manufacturing is a central element, is going to be one of our new investment themes. SGInnovate always invests with a 3-pronged approach of community building, talent development, and financial investment. And we expect that NAMIC is going to be a key partner in the execution of our new investment strategy. I want to take this opportunity to thank Sam Onokuri from Johnson & Johnson, Dan Braley of Boeing, and Abhinav Singhal of ThyssenKrupp for joining us today and sharing your thoughts, your plans, and best practices with us. Suchi, my colleague from SGInnovate's investments team, is going to be moderating this session. Also, our deep appreciation to NAMIC, our co-organizer of today's event, for this valued partnership, and I look forward to more such joint collaborations between us. And now, please allow me to invite Dr. Ho Chao Sing, Managing Director of NAMIC, to say a few words. Chao Sing, please.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Dr. Lim, for that wonderful opening. I've actually known Jay for several years. In fact, he's one of the co-founding for NAMIC itself. Glad to have you here to kick off this Future of Additive Manufacturing event. I'm just going to speak a few words before we start the expert panel session, just to lay the landscape. Additive manufacturing, in some ways, is experiencing a renaissance as more companies begin to adopt technology solutions in-house. No longer solely a tool for rapid prototyping, the technology is finding a new lease of life in industrial and medical applications, showing its agility in powering rapid product development, as well as enabling short lead times for production. Most importantly, it will play a pivotal role in supporting sustainable development and manufacturing addressing some of the planetary scale crises that we're facing today, especially in climate change. New players offering innovative solutions continue to enter the market, and partnerships and acquisitions continue to proliferate as well. In this regard, this year, 2021, has started with a bang for the 3D printing industry. As most of you may have read, two of the unicorns in the sector, Markforged and Desktop 3D Metal, have both listed via a SPAC merger, as well as several other mergers, such as Advanced Manufacturing Engineering Company, a public listed company, Proto Labs, acquiring Dutch-based 3D Hubs. As some of you may know, 3D Hubs is one of the pioneers in enabling online manufacturing platform offering on-demand access to its global network of manufacturing partners. I'm especially delighted that we have managed to secure three wonderful speakers today. Sam Onakuri from Johnson & Johnson, Dan Braley from Boeing Global Services, and Abhinav Singhal from ThyssenKrupp to kick off this Future of Additive Manufacturing series. I want to thank personally to SGInnovate, especially Jue, for agreeing to partner with us on this Future of Manufacturing series. Thanks to Suchi as well from SGInnovate for moderating this expert panel. I'd like to end by acknowledging and thanking the organizing team, Wei-Min from SGInnovate and William from NAMIC, who have worked very hard in the past 2 months conceptualizing and putting this event series together. I hope all of you will enjoy this panel session. And with that, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Ho, for that wonderful opening, and thank you, Jui, for the opening as well. And good morning, everyone, and good evening in some countries, I suppose. Warm welcome to this session that is a joint collaboration between NAMIC and SGInnovate, Future of Additive Manufacturing. If you're here for the wrong session, time to run right now. So my name is Suchitra, Suchi for short. Those of you that don't know me, I'm a director with SGInnovate's venture investments arm. Spent my career providing consulting, management consulting, commercial advisory, acquisitions, investments, corporate partnerships across pretty much Asia and Australia as well. So really excited to be moderating this session with such wonderful panelists today. In particular, we're going to be looking at deep technologies in the manufacturing industry that are that the industry is adopting, but as well as I'd love to hear about some game-changing innovations from our panelists. So to give you a very quick, a warm-up, and this is, manufacturing has gone through a lot of changes, right, from the Industrial Revolution, from the 1800s, right? And the technologies that we have used to shape, to join, to design and measure components have changed dramatically. After years and years of incremental evolution, we're finally seeing step changes that are starting to happen. So if I looked at the collaborative white paper that was produced by NAMIC, and it's really fantastic to see that Asia actually accounts for 28% of the additive manufacturing size. I mean, to put it in perspective, it's about 26 in EU and 36 in the US. And clearly, we have a very strong foothold in this space. And if you think about it closer to home, Singapore, manufacturing has been a key enabler of the local economy, creating jobs, top corporates coming in. We're leveraging sort of the efficiency in Singapore, the workforce, the demographical advantage, and so on. And additive manufacturing in particular is seen as something that is very critical for cross-industry disruption. So it's the availability of technology combined with that strong focus on manufacturing, along with, I think, the encouragement coming from both the government sector and the private sector on innovation and entrepreneurship that is making Singapore one of the leaders in adopting additive manufacturing solutions and executing on these solutions today. So which is why we're here today to have this conversation. We have a very broad and diverse panel representing various industries. And so hopefully for the audience, you're going to get many different perspectives of the same queries. So before we begin, it would be great for our speakers to share a little bit about themselves, their work, and what additive manufacturing means to them. I'll just start with the order that you appear on my screen. So I'll start with Abhinav. Tell us a little bit about your company, your role, and how do you see additive manufacturing as a disruptive technology?
Thank you, Suchi. That was a great setup for the discussion. So my name is Abhinav. I head strategy for Thyssen Group for the Asia Pacific region, and I was involved in setting up our AM business in the region. Before this, I was with McKinsey as an associate partner, so that's briefly about me. Regarding Thyssen Group, we have been working with additive manufacturing for the last 7 to 8 years now, since 2015. And our focus has been on using additive manufacturing for industrial sectors like cement, chemical, mining, and also maritime and automotive. So the focus is on applications of 3D printing. We are not a 3D printer or a manufacturer or let's say a software provider, but the end user, and how do we find use cases where additive manufacturing can help us make machines better, provide spare part to our customers, and understand this disruption which our business is facing. We've also set up a AM team in Singapore 2 years back in partnership with NAMIC and EDB. And here the focus has been on exploring maritime and transportation and automotive applications. So specifically in maritime, we're working with Wilhelmsen Ship Services as a strong partner. And there we are trying to create the whole ecosystem of providing additive manufacturing to anyone who is part of the maritime industry. So you can walk into an online platform and you can choose from a catalog of parts and order as a 3D printed version. You get a better lead time, you get a better choice of material, a lower cost, and this can be delivered to the nearest port with in a much more sustainable manner than what you have in the past. So this is where we are most excited about. How do we create an ecosystem of AM solutions for our customers, both in maritime sector and industrial sectors? And we have found Singapore to be a hub of this activity, and this is where we are running this business out of. Happy to share more, but that was a brief overview of what we have been up to with AM.
Thank you, Abhinav. Sam, may I request you to share about your role, your company, and also don't forget the perspective of disruption in the context of additive manufacturing.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Good morning to you and good evening to some of you. A happy International Women's Day today, Suchi. So,
thank you. And on behalf of all the female audience, thank you.
It's amazing to see, the innovation from all these spaces. So just quickly I've been with Johnson & Johnson for 25 years, and it's being a part of this innovation group in 3D printing, and we have a very strong partnership with Singapore for many years. Dr. Ho Chow Singh, various others, we have a lot of work happening in that space. I see that this 3D printing or additive manufacturing over the last decade or so has really transformed itself from a pure prototyping type of view to really enabling some amazing things in healthcare industry, specifically where the Johnson & Johnson plays in. The few areas, I think it definitely brings a value in cost, like you said, Abhinav, and also in speed to market, but also it can bring some amazing new designs which could not have been done before, right? Also bringing some unique personalization, whether it is a medical product or a medicine or a medical device. The personalization is one area this platform technologies can really bring a big value in. The other thing I see, at least in the healthcare space, is the 3D bioprinting space, right? I mean, we print right now metals and plastics, which are not alien to the human body, but think about days when you can print your own tissue, whether it's a cartilage, meniscus, or bone, using this technology and really making it holistic for your body. So those type of things are really getting enabled, and it's really expanding. And we see this technology from Johnson & Johnson perspective that it can really change the way we live, and also, in a very healthy manner, and change the trajectory of this human health moving forward. So,
thank you, Sam. That's very inspiring. Dan, over to you.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. Yeah, I'm Dan Braley. I am a Boeing Associate Technical Fellow in additive manufacturing, electromagnetic products, as well as composites. And so my initial the start of my career was actually in design and with composites and that sort of thing. And it's evolved over the last 17 years into really a leader in the additive manufacturing aerospace sustainment sector or area. Excuse me. And so in my current role within Boeing, I serve sustainment of everything from military, commercial, derivative aircraft, through really implementation of additive manufacturing technologies, as well as advanced composites. But the big thing is when, for example, tooling is no longer available, when some of these older platforms, the aircrafts have been flying since the 1950s, and there's no parts available. There's no longer a sustainment base, really anything to be able to get the parts. And so what do? We look at alternatives. And so what really additive manufacturing is disrupting the sustainment business within aerospace. And I love that I get a chance to be a part of it, because it's fun to come to work every day. Anyways, thank you for inviting me. Definitely happy to.
Thank you, Dan. Sorry, I think we lost you for a second, but we got you back, so we could hear you. Abhinav, let me start with you, because there are multiple industries that that you referenced just now in your introduction. You talked about cement, mining, chemicals. Give us a broad brush perspective on the AM potential in these industrial sectors. And also, I think you mentioned maritime, if I wasn't mistaken. So it would be great to get an idea of applications and potentials moving forward.
Sure. Let me lay down the context a bit for this. So if you look at the overall industry applications for AM, right now 65% of the AM market is focused on aerospace, automotive, medical, and tooling sectors. So the penetration into your conventional industrial sectors, maritime sectors, is very fragmented, not more than 5-10% at best of the total AM market. And that too is driven by printers and software makers. The application potential is even lower, at less than 30%. So what we are seeing is that overall globally, you have around $12 trillion of manufacturing value add, and the size of AM industry is 12-13 billion at best, right? So that's less than 0.1% penetration. So what has happened so far is that AM in industrials has been limited to very low penetration, has been either used for rapid prototyping or in some cases for tooling, but has not really moved on to another way of mass production, batch production, or for spare parts, compared to, for example, aerospace and automotive. And this is where we see a huge potential, that when you come to sectors like chemical plants, cement, mining, these are also resource intensive sectors which are in distributed locations, which can benefit for having critical spare parts on demand, which can benefit in the light of the crisis last year, having more resilience in supply chain, having ability to print parts on demand, to have an access to a critical spare, which can save, for example, a cement plant $1 million a day if you're able to provide the production just in time. And AM can offer all of that. The only caveat is with the development of technology, not all parts can be 3D printed economically. So our experience has been that if you take a diagnostic of any sector, maybe a cement sector or maritime, you look at 100 parts, 10 to 15% of them today are ready to be 3D printed. And unfortunately, only 0.1% of them are getting 3D printed. So we see that there is a 15x growth opportunity in just using the technology as it is today and applying in these sectors. Let me just close with a couple of examples to make it even more real for our listeners. So for example, in cement, we found a fuel nozzle which typically costs around 1,500 euros, is imported for us from Germany, takes around 2 to 3 months of lead time. And we can easily 3D print it out of Singapore and supply it to our plants in Southeast Asia to our customers, reduce the lead time from 3 months to now 4 to 5 weeks, reduce the cost from 1,500 to 1,100. So there is also a cost improvement. And then that just saves so much time for ensuring that there is a continued production. Similarly, in maritime, if you look at the maritime sector, we are spending over $8 billion on spare parts globally. And for each vessel, even if you do 5% of these spare parts using 3D printing, we estimated a 500 million market for AM, which is right now penetrated at best by 5-10%. So I hope that gives some glimpses of opportunity, but net, it is only a matter of finding applications, finding value, and the technology is mature to create at least 15% parts in each of these sectors to be 3D printed.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And, it's interesting you mentioned the 3D printing, how it's picking up, particularly last year, and there's a need for automation. We saw that drive in most companies. So there was a need to quickly step up digital transformation and automation as well. But I'm curious to hear from Sam here about if the pandemic actually accelerated in any way your industry or your organization's perspective of additive manufacturing because of this. And we did see some very quick responses in terms of 3D printing of ventilators, parts of ventilators, urgent responses and things like that. But specifically for Johnson & Johnson, have you seen that? And what exactly are you seeing in the healthcare space?
Yeah, I think, the last year in 2020 was an interesting year for all of us, right? It just definitely put us upside down. But I think one thing it did make a big difference is how the 3D printing or additive manufacturing community reacted to that. It doesn't matter what industry you are in. I think everybody became extremely connected to what the people's needs are and able to innovate in a very quick manner. So you can see that reflected in how people reacted to providing the ventilators themselves, or low-cost ventilators, ventilator splitters, some of the testing swabs, things of that nature. So I think that really opened us up to really bring the importance of this technology. And also the speed at which we could do that. For example, we typically a medical device takes probably a year and a half or so to really take it from a concept stage and all the way to bring it to the commercialization with all the, going through the entire quality system process. We were able to get one of the ventilator splitters from a concept to the customer within 10 days. So a lot of it is enabled by how we can convert multiple design concepts quickly, cycle through them, and also how 3D printing or additive manufacturing can quickly scale with our tooling and everything else, and able to print, production-like product direct to the customers. So very, very important. I think the other thing what's happening is globally, if you see, it was good or bad, everybody's becoming a little bit more country specific, right? The boundaries are getting a little tighter. And as each country tries to deal with this, the pandemic or the influence from that, I think technology platforms like these really can bring localization and personalization to the local needs. And able to deliver what people, the customers need in those regions. So I think 3D printing for that space also is going to be evolving to really help when the global supply chains may fail, right? So bringing the localization in that space. So good learning for us. I think it really brought us, really evolved how we are thinking about how we serve our customers in a different manner.
And has that, so has additive manufacturing then sort of influenced or changed the way Johnson & Johnson perceives its future of manufacturing strategy? What has been the influence?
Yeah, I think so Johnson & Johnson is, we have three big businesses, right? One is definitely in the medical device space, another one is in the pharmaceuticals, and the third being more on the consumer space. So each of them have a different way how additive is being seen. For example, in med devices, it is innovating in the space, bringing some new implantable materials, the bioprinting I talked to you about, right? So those type of things, disruption that additive manufacturing is bringing the med device space. Also, it is bringing the printing closer to the hospitals and the customers. A good example is we're partnering in a hospital in Singapore, National University of Health Hospital, tried to pilot to bring some printed solution for orthopedic applications, right, which is printed inside the hospital setting. Those type of things are happening in the med device. Personalized medicine is really revolutionizing in enabled by 3D printing. Right now, more for custom dosage forms or APIs, but longer run, we're starting to see more on personalization on genomic level, right? Depending upon what you personally need, you label, we personalize the printing. So that's going to happen in the pharmaceutical space. And the consumer space, again, you'll have a lot more personalization in the personal level, right? Like in a beauty products, or it could be in the OTC type of medical applications, so on and so forth. So depending upon the area, 3D printing is transforming and disrupting in a different manner. So.
Really interesting. The term that came to my head when you said that is mass personalization. it's literally that. So Dan, let's hear from you. What is the future role of additive manufacturing in the aerospace industry? And is there a difference in perspective, short-term and long-term, that you can share with us?
Sure. In the aerospace industry, it's been a game changer, and I think it's gonna continue to be a game changer. For example, if we look at, I briefly mentioned the parts that are the aircrafts that we're talking about right now, which are like 1950s military aircraft, critical to U.S. national security or something like those kinds of things, and they're grounded, waiting for parts, and they without those parts, they're literally on the ground, waiting to fly, and so what Additive has been able to do is augment the traditional manufacturing approaches and allow us to quickly get those aircrafts off the ground. There are a few cases where we've taken it from a 2-year lead time to on the metallic side, 6-month lead time in order to basically get from concept, complete redesign and additive manufacturing to something where we can actually produce it in not only a timely manner, but also an economical fashion as well. And then also get through certification. I think one of the things we just heard about is from the medical side is also the certification that's required. If we're going to utilize anything like that, cert has been the hardest part. And how do we get past that? We're getting there, and so it has been a game changer in that perspective, where we've been able to already realize it on individual part levels. What I foresee into the future is that we're going to, almost see a revolution in certain technologies or certain application spaces. Tooling for castings, you know, so where we can take a casting from you know, a 2-year lead time down to really even weeks. Those sorts of things, as well as in new designs, instead of designing for a casting, we can actually additive manufacture the parts moving forward. And that's, you know, things like that are going to make a drastic change into the future.
So I heard from you some specific words that resonated. You know, the cost, the time needed, the lead time, the flexibility. So Abhinav, curious if you have a perspective on quantifying the quality improvements brought about by AM, and how can a company really adapt their business strategy to incorporate this?
I think you touched on, sorry, go ahead.
Dan, did you want to?
I was going to say,
sure.
Sorry. I wasn't sure if it was to me. You had broken up, so I was sorry. if it was to Abhinav, go ahead. Sorry.
No, after you're done, why don't we?
Okay. So was the question around quality? I'm sorry.
So quantifying the benefits of the quality improvements that AM can bring to a business strategy.
Sure. So to me, within the aerospace side, what we have seen is I guess when we look at you know, I'll go back to castings. So particularly in castings, what we've seen in quality is we've been able to significantly well, we've been able to add additional supports and you know, basically I'm trying to remember the word, the tooling that's involved. It can get extremely complex, and what we can now do is design in that complexity to actually better suit the actual casting of parts to reduce the amount of thermal distortion, cracking, things like that. And so, you know, really we're seeing a quantitative, you know, value of additive in the fact of how it really does get rid of the scrap rate. It reduces scrap rate by a significant amount.
So maybe, Suchi, to continue from our perspective, in terms of quantification, I think that is one of the biggest bottleneck why AM adoption has been low in industrial sectors. Because historically, if you look at some of the examples from aerospace, automotive sectors, at least lightweighting of parts had a easy quantification in terms of fuel savings, and there was an easy business case which you can demonstrate on why you should invest in AM. But when it comes to industrial applications, you have to quantify, let's say, what is the reduction in lead time equivalent to, or what does sustainability of having lesser manufacturers or a better material, how does that translate into business outcome? And there is no straight one answer to that, Suchi, but our experience is that you do need to look at it at a more holistic element when you're trying to make that assessment. So there is a cost of making that part from a conventional process. There is a cost of making the part using additive manufacturing. Then there are some additional value which you can get either by lightweighting of the part or by reducing the lead time, which means that you can have a opportunity cost of production, which you might have lost out to, or you have, let's say, an alternative material which is cheaper, or you have a better design with improved performance, which means you have a higher lifetime. So you need to quantify that and then compare it with the additional risk you take in using AM, which in many cases is now also mitigated. And that is the real assessment, which tells you whether a part is ready for 3D printing or not. And our experience is that tech has been very good at that. So when you look at SaaS companies, they have dedicated teams on value engineering who are spending day and night just figuring out what does an AI solution quantify into a EBIT outcome for my company. And I think AM as an industry is way behind that. We have to learn to be a bit more commercial savvy and translate the value technology is bringing on an R&D and product teams into what it means for the business outcome, because that's when the adoption really picks up.
So if that's the case, and I'm hearing different things from the different panelists, it's interesting because the corporates are adopting it, and yet there is a gap in adoption. What are the greatest challenges for corporates in adopting additive manufacturing and sort of paving that whole way for Industry 4.0?
So maybe a quick answer from my perspective or from our experience has been the top 3 challenges has been: number 1, lack of awareness of applications. So there is still a lot of biases and myths associated with technology. It's too expensive. It's for rapid prototyping. It can only work for a certain size and dimension of the parts. But people miss the fact that more than 90% of hearing aids, for example, are being made by additive manufacturing in the world today. People miss the fact that when you compare technology, AM is not one technology. It's actually a plethora of 15, 20, 50 technologies, and it can have powder bed fusion for small scale, but it can also have VAMS and DED for large scale parts. So I feel that lack of awareness of applications associated with AM is one big bottleneck. Second bottleneck, of course, is availability of talent, which is directly coupled with lack of awareness, because you have less qualified people both on technical side but also on commercial side on using AMs and large corporates. So typically you have the product teams, R&D teams who are looking into this. They have a multi-year strategy of finding few parts, and then it gets restricted, or in some industries like aerospace, medical, gets adopted to a larger extent. But if it really needs to happen across sectors, then you need to have much more people who are working on AM projects, and you're seeing this as an alternate means of production and not just an R&D technology.
Interesting. It sounds like the corporates are focused on the 85% of parts that can't, as opposed to saying, let's not look at the end to end. Let's focus on the 15% that can, which was
exactly
what you said before. Yeah, but it is hard because the minute somebody brings up ideas inside a large corporate, it's, oh, can we have the end-to-end? Can we print every single part? If the answer is no, oh, it's too much trouble, right? So yeah, that's interesting. So with Sam, can I round this out? And there's a lot of really interesting questions from the audience, which I'm going to get to after this. But Sam, could you round out for us what lies in the future for the production of new goods, new products, and new services and new businesses using this technology?
Yeah, I think, connecting back to what Abhinav and Dan was saying, right? I think, as a community, if you look at end-to-end from who we are as a deliverer of solutions to our customers, we need to think holistically from design to manufacturing to commercialization. Sometimes we take a very narrow view of taking an existing component or a part and try to convert that into AM, and doesn't give you the full value. I think really this need to be seen as an, go back to the beginning to see if I can reconcept something with the additive in mind, a 3D in mind, and design it that way. That brings a lot more value and reduction in cost. And that's how we can transform, whatever application that might be. I think that's what needs to happen. And also the key to that is not the talent, good talent in manufacturing, but we need talent also in the R&D and design side who can really able to conceptualize and take advantage of the design freedom which comes with it. And also the commercial folks, right, who are on the other side of it, really be able to take advantage of this. So the gap needs to be done in an end-to-end manner and not just in the localized community manner. So that's what I would say, kind of adding on to that. So Was there another question you asked, Suchi, if I forgot?
No, there are a lot of questions in the Q&A panel that are directed at you. So I'm just getting to that in a minute, Sam.
Okay.
So for the audience, please do keep your questions coming in the Q&A box, and we are going to an audience Q&A now. So let's get to the very first question. This is not addressed to anyone particularly, so any of you can take it. Would the panelists paint some scenarios for the future of additive manufacturing? What impact do you think these would have on Singapore's economy specifically? And how can the manufacturing industry actually prepare for it?
Happy to take that, Suchi, as an ex-consultant, quite familiar with painting scenarios. But I think if I have to pick 2 or 3 scenarios of what this technology can lead to, maybe as the first element, then we talk about Singapore. One scenario which is very, very likely is that it becomes an alternate means of manufacturing production. So with the last year's even higher focus on supply chain resilience, companies look for AM for having a secondary manufacturing line, an alternate manufacturing line, which is on demand for critical spare parts, for digital spares, so that when they are they face a disruption in a conventional process, they have an option to go back to an alternate process and they can 3D print those parts and minimize disruption. So that could be one scenario where there is a larger adoption, but restricted as a secondary to a conventional process. The second scenario could be it becomes a niche technology, which means so the first one is base case, and it is a bit pessimistic. It becomes a niche technology restricted to only few sectors, never achieves mass scale adoption, where you have higher value, the technology continues to be at a premium to conventional processes, and maybe only healthcare, high customization requirements, high value of materials, only those applications adopt it. And the last scenario is what I think we can pick this from Dr. Richard Evany, who wrote this Pan-Industrial Revolution book, that you have one shop floor where you have a lot of 3D printers, and you can actually print a variety of parts across sectors. So let's say ThyssenKrupp, being a conglomerate, works in cement chemical mining, and you have one 3D printer which is printing a chemical part and then a cement part and then a mining part from the same machine. So you don't need different manufacturing plants and sites, but you just need a distributed 3D printing facility, and on demand you can reduce parts of different sectors. This, of course, is, I would say, a bit more futuristic because there are practical challenges on certification, on post-machining requirements, but that also an option, looking ahead. So these, I would say, are the 3 scenarios. What it means for Singapore, I think Singapore already, as you remarked in the opening, contributes to 40% of AM activity in this region. It is already pivoted as one of the pioneers in AM adoption. And given Singapore continues to focus on manufacturing at 20% of GDP, I think AM is a way to go to ensure that that value add continues and Singapore remains relevant. With limited size, limited availability of space, we use AM as an advanced technology to create value in different sectors. But happy to hear other thoughts as well.
If you don't mind, Suchi, I've got one other thing that it kind of brought up in my mind is, where one place where I really see, kind of a disruption where it could really help Singapore is actually, it was first just demonstrated between Boeing and NAMIC really just a few weeks ago, I think it was, where sending a fully digital package for additive manufacturing, from different continents to Singapore and having it print, basically having the person in the United States hit print on a machine in Singapore and have it print right then and there, utilizing your print parameters. This has been demonstrated now, as a capability, as something that can really happen. And that I think is going to be, a game changer to really the economy of countries that want to get involved, which obviously, Singapore does. And so think about it as Southeast Asia, instead of, bringing in and having to procure additive manufactured parts from around the world or that sort of thing. Now you're literally producing all of your own. You order it on demand, and now you don't need, distribution. You don't need the basically supply hubs and centers.
Sam, did you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was going to just quickly add, not taking a lot of time on this, but I see Singapore is a very unique country and a city in a way that it brings, it's a very, in my opinion, that we have very forward-thinking industry, forward-thinking government, very proactive in a lot of things. Singapore could become a very important piloting for some of these newer technologies linked with the 3D printing. Like, for example, I was talking about bioprinting and things of that nature. Because of the way the infrastructure is, because of the way some of the policies are all very well synergized, it could be in the front runner to really try out some of these things. Like we are saying, this additive manufacturing is not just one, right? It is multiple. It's a platform of technology. So trying to be on the leading edge of the Gartner's curve, Singapore can really incubate those and really push that forward. I think I really strongly believe in it. I've been working with Singaporeans for a while, so I do know that there's a good strength in the country in that matter. So.
Thank you. And while I have you speaking, there is a question directed at you that we'd love to hear. I think it was inspired by your earlier comments on printing body parts and tissues and so on. So what are the greatest concerns for AM processes in the healthcare industry when manufacturing organic materials that you've mentioned earlier, such as 3D printed body parts, bones, cartilages? Is the certification one of the many concerns? And how many years do you think this technology of printing parts through AM processes come to pass?
No, that's a great question, right? I think it's definitely in the very earlier space. I think there are certain, most of it is in academic space, but there are certain kind of companies are more getting closer and closer to the commercialization. I think the biggest hurdle is, but technology is definitely the biggest hurdle. I mean, in the sense that it is not about printing something. You can print everything, but making those cells grow and be able to turn into something functional. The body is a lot more smarter than we are, right? So how it does. So bringing the exact chemistry of everything together is something we learn and move forward with it. The biggest area we are learning is, one is the technology itself. The other is the regulations and the regulatory pathways on how we commercialize some of the products. So the regulators are still trying to figure out a little bit on how that pathway would look like as we move forward, and also trying to be very strategic about moving that. It is about gathering that clinical knowledge and evidence along the way. What I think would happen is that there would be, we won't jump into printing and delivering a full heart or a full lung or whatever, fully functional thing. There may be a lot of small steps we would take, whether it could be biologically active scaffolds might be step number one. There may be a small organoids which would be used for some tissue testing, things like that. And we kind of learn from it before we create that the complex organ, either for implantation and so on and so forth. So I would say, like, the next 4 to 5 years, you'll see a lot more happening in that space, and hopefully larger launches maybe within the decade or so. So that would be my prediction, but we'll see. Hope I answered that question for the.
Yeah, and we have a connected question. I think it's sort of related. It talks about the food business, and nowadays we're having a lot of impossible foods and, various plant-based meats, cell-based meats, and so on. How can AM print a meat that actually can taste like meat with the same texture and mouthfeel? As I understand, the ingredients have to be all smooth and consistent. Perhaps those with tech knowledge can share a view of the future of meat and seafood from 3D printing.
Yeah, I could start it and others can add to that, right? I think it's already happening, right? I've seen a lot of the areas. If it can be very specifically tailored, I don't know if we can satisfy these, connoisseurs who know the taste of how meat should taste like. It might not happen. But I would say that, certain medical applications, for example, if it's a geriatric case, then where we are not able to get certain nutrients into the body, or in a pediatric forms when a baby is there, certain foods can be particularly designed and made and textured such a way that you get the nutritionals what you need for the particular thing. The personalized medicine, for example, right, for small pediatric patients and stuff like that. Making custom dosage forms. It's a very similar technology how you use the food printers also, able to really fine tune your needs and the texturing and the smells associated with it. So it's a long way to evolve. We may not be perfect like a piece of steak, but I think there's some unique applications this technology can help in unique needs and stuff. So
thanks for that perspective, Sam. So moving again to a question that's not necessarily addressed at any individual, so any of you can take it. What is the next leap in AM to expect, and will it be driven by a policy or a mindset shift, a new standardization or alignment or technology enablers, or all of them?
Well, I think in the aerospace industry, really the future within the sustainment side is really in hybrid additive manufacturing tech approaches. Not what we're going to start getting away from is, well, I wouldn't not necessarily away from, but we'll start seeing a lot more of not just utilizing a standard polymer printer or a metal printer. We'll see mixtures thereof. We'll see printing of electronics, more so than you do right now. We'll see the advancement of continuous carbon fiber additive manufacturing, for example, where you end up having, you can literally put the properties in the direction that you want them and really drive the performance to what you would like, that you would not otherwise be able to produce without additive manufacturing. I think that is the kind of places that we're going to end up seeing a real shift, and kind of the future is going to, we'll see more than just non-structural parts and things like that. We'll be able to really design for structure that we otherwise couldn't before.
Maybe just to add on to that, Suchi, on the commercial side, the next big shift which we are seeing is moving away from trying to optimize for your part of the value chain to forming ecosystems at a sectorial level. I think that concept of forming an ecosystem is the next big shift which we see, at least from adoption perspective. To give you an example, in maritime, for example, we are trying to construct an ecosystem with Wilhelmsen where you have a network of print hubs which can print parts on demand. You have the certification agencies like DNVGL, Lloyd's Register, who can tell which parts needs to be class certified, which parts do not. You have material suppliers, you have vessel owners, you have OEMs, all coming together at the industry level, and then identifying how do we get to those 15% of those parts as quickly as possible, and how do we work together so that everybody can take a piece of the pie and help adoption of the technology. You've seen some of these announcements also in Germany, for example, on rail, with Deutsche Bahn trying to create the whole network around it. But this network of creating additive manufacturing players together and identifying parts and sharing those applications to increase the adoption, I think that could be a real catalyst in reaching to the potential of technology.
And Dan and Sam, curious to hear from you. From a regulatory standpoint, are there any challenges or concerns that companies should think through before embarking on a AM journey?
Yeah, I think, I mean, definitely, I think I agree with Abhinav that, you know, not just in the industrial side, but also in the healthcare and the medical side too, the concept of the ecosystem and localization will start to become a lot more prominent, whether you are printing in a hospital setting or a consumer retail setting. The issue there would be that the line between the manufacturer and the user will start getting blurred, right? Whether it's the clinician who's doing the surgery or the liabilities will start getting murkier. So, you know, in that context, you know, we need to really evolve our regulatory frameworks so that how do we regulate when you have a global network of printers or solutions, you know, which could be providing therapeutic solutions to different customers. So that would be a challenge for us, but I think the regulatory bodies are definitely thinking in a very proactive manner, advanced manner, and trying to work with us. I think that's going to be for the next few years. That's going to evolve over time, I think.
And from the aerospace side, yeah, whether it's the FAA or EASA or the Singapore, you know, authorities, they have requirements of being able to prove it flight worthy, and depending on particularly in commercial aircraft, but we have the same thing when it comes to military, and so, you know, the F-15, for example, is something that, you know, Singapore has, and as part of that, we have to go through all of the same requirements and regulations that are here in the United States for the F-15. In order to be able to get any of those parts onto something like that. And yes, so you have to be able to meet those particular requirements. Then you also have to be able to, especially if you're a company that's trying to produce parts for someone like Boeing, you have to be able to meet Boeing specifications and prove yourself and qualify yourself to the specifications. That's not an easy task. Nobody says it is, and the other part is it can be costly and timely, you know, or time consuming to try and get it completed. And so there's a lot of economic considerations to basically take into account in getting involved in some of those more difficult components.
Thanks, Dan. I want to be respectful of time. I know our US-based panelists, it is getting rather late in the day for you, and we're coming to the close of the session. So I might just round out with one last question and maybe a 20-30-second response from the panelists. What is your sort of rapid fire response to corporates and startups out there in terms of coming together to improve the world of additive manufacturing?
Focus on value.
Go ahead.
Sorry, just quick one. Focus on value and not just the technology expertise. Ultimately, it's about business adoption. So there has to be a business benefit with it.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Oh, okay. Sorry, no problem. I would say don't lock yourself out. If I've seen it from, I guess the biggest mistake of some of the larger additive manufacturing companies, it's basically making it so that we can't innovate. You know, you buy a $1 million plus machine and you can't innovate off of that machine because you don't have the rights to add a new material or to change parameters or that sort of thing. Like, so if you're a startup and you're trying to get into, keep that in mind, that I think you'll see more benefit in allowing it to be more open, and it'll create a more open architecture for us to be able to work together.
Thank you for that, Sam. Did you have a last comment as well?
Yeah, quickly, I was going to say that I think it's, don't get enamored by the technology, right? I think we need to be really focused on who we are serving and what the needs are. And the amazing thing about 3D printing and additive technology is a platform of technology, right? It's a tool, and it can really be yielded in a wonderful way to bring the solutions to the customer needs are. So be focused on the customer.
Oh, that's great advice. And Abhinav, you'll resonate with this, because as consultants, we used to create more problems than we actually solve. So it's good to know that focus on a problem and then go solve it. So on that note, I'd like to say a couple of thank yous. Big thank you to our panelists. You've been amazing sports. I know it's morning and evening for some of you based overseas. So Abhinav, Sam, Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you virtually. Thank you as well to Jui and Dr. Holt for opening this session, also for the National Additive Manufacturing Innovation Cluster and the team at SGInnovate. Big thanks to get this organized. Wayman, shout out to you as always. And the audience, you've been wonderful. Great questions, so keep them coming. And everyone have a great morning and evening, and stay safe. Still a pandemic out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.